By the time Olivia Hart called me a thief, everyone at the table had eaten my mother's food. The banker had asked for seconds. The county reporter had photographed the bread. 30 ranch hands had laughed louder than they had in months, and Daniel Mercer had looked less like a widower saving a failing ranch, and more like a man who remembered home. Then Olivia stood. My cousin, and my mother's former business partner, raised the blue recipe book. "Before you approve this loan," she said, "you should know who prepared your dinner." The laughter vanished. Behind her, the projector changed from Cedar Ridge's recovery plan to a photograph of me outside our burned restaurant. Ash streaked my face. The book was clutched beneath my coat. Across the image, one word appeared: predatory. Olivia told them I had stolen the recipes my mother built the company on and attached myself to Daniel because his ranch was vulnerable. The banker closed his folder. Daniel's foreman looked toward the men whose wages depended on that loan. I could have told them Olivia registered my mother's recipes under her company 3 days after the funeral. I could have explained why I took the book and why its final page was blank. But the truth would expose Daniel too. He had known about Olivia's complaint and kept it out of the loan file while he searched for proof. If the bank learned that tonight, Cedar Ridge's application would freeze. If I spoke, 30 men might lose their wages. If I stayed silent, Olivia's version of my life became the truth again. She placed the book in the center of the table like stolen property. "Go ahead, Evelyn," she said softly. "Tell them who you really are." Daniel rose. For one terrible second, I thought he was going to abandon me. Instead, he took the book before Olivia could touch it again, placed it in front of me, and rested one hand on my chair. "No," he said, looking at the banker. "She tells it herself." Then he turned to me. "Start with the blank page." 6 weeks earlier, the same book was pressed against my ribs as I stood outside the locked gate of Cedar Ridge Ranch with $43, a canvas bag, and no return ticket. The August heat had softened the asphalt beneath my boots. Beyond the gate, cattle moved through pale grass, and the ranch looked more tired than the job listing had admitted. A wooden sign beside the keypad read Cedar Ridge Mercer, family land. Someone had painted over the word family. The old letters still showed through. I pressed the call button. A man answered after the 4th ring. "We're not hiring visitors." "I'm not visiting." "You selling something?" "Dinner, if your kitchen is as desperate as the listing suggests." The line went quiet. A truck appeared on the interior road a minute later. It stopped on the other side of the gate, and the driver stepped out wearing work jeans, a sun-faded shirt, and the expression of a man who had run out of patience years ago and learned to operate without it. Gray touched Daniel Mercer's dark hair near the temples. His face was lean, controlled, and difficult to read. His eyes went to my bag, then my boots, then the blue book. "You're Evelyn Hart. You have my application." "I have an application from a restaurant consultant with no current address, and a reference who refuses to answer questions. My reference is 80 years old, and considers questions a form of aggression." The corner of his mouth moved, then stopped. "You were supposed to arrive tomorrow." The bus schedule disagreed. He opened the gate but did not step aside. "My foreman says we need a cook. My accountant says we need fewer employees. I say I need one person who can do the work of 3 without creating a 4th problem." "That sounds unhealthy." "It's honest. So is this. I need a kitchen, a room, and wages paid when promised. You need 30 men fed before they remember they can quit." His gaze sharpened. "Who told you they were quitting?" "The sign." He glanced toward it. "You painted over family instead of replacing the board. That means you wanted the word gone, but not enough to spend money doing it properly. The bunkhouse roof has 3 temporary patches. One truck is missing a rear tire. Your cook quit during your busiest month, and the listing has been reposted every week." I adjusted the book against my side. "Places don't look tired by accident, Mr. Mercer. Neither do people." He held my gaze long enough for the cicadas to fill the space between us. Then he opened the gate wider. "Cook 1 dinner." That was already the plan. "If the men eat it, I'll pay you for the day." "They'll eat it. If they ask for it again tomorrow, you can stay through the bank review." I stepped past him. "And if you decide who I am before tasting anything," his hand remained on the gate, "then you should leave before I waste your time." It was the first fair thing anyone had said to me in months. The ranch kitchen had good equipment, empty shelves, and the stale smell of a room where food had become another task. A handwritten schedule listed names beside breakfast, lunch, and dinner, each crossed out by someone different. Daniel stood in the doorway while I opened cabinets. What's in the book? Recipes. Yours? The question landed harder than he could have known. My mother's handwriting, my grandmother's measurements, my changes in the margins. That wasn't my question. I turned. He did not look accusing. He looked careful, which sometimes hurt more. They belong to the people who made them, I said. Most of those people are dead. Before he could answer, a young ranch hand entered carrying a crate of onions. He saw me and nearly dropped it. I know you. No, you don't. He shifted the crate to one hip and pulled out his phone. Daniel's voice changed. Ben, the young man froze. Put it away. But she's the woman from... I said put it away. Ben obeyed, though his eyes stayed on my face. I did not ask what he had seen. I already knew. Olivia's first accusation had traveled farther than I had. Daniel waited until Ben left. Is there something you need to tell me? None of the truthful answers would fit inside the time left before dinner. I set the blue book on the prep table and opened it to my mother's bread recipe. The final page lifted briefly in the air from the ceiling vent, blank and pale, before settling back into place. Yes, I said. Daniel braced himself. I need 4 hours, every onion Ben was carrying, and a key to the dry storage. That's all? For now. He removed a brass key from his ring and placed it beside the book. I don't like surprises. Then don't come back before dinner. He studied me once more, then left. I locked the kitchen door and pressed both hands to the scarred table. Then I opened my mother's book. On the first page, above a stain shaped like a small brown moon, she had written the rule she trusted more than any recipe. Feed the person in front of you, not the story you were told about them. I had spent months failing to do that for myself. At Cedar Ridge, I had one meal to begin again. The first thing I cooked at Cedar Ridge was bread, not because it was the most impressive thing I could make. I chose it because a kitchen tells the truth fastest when dough is involved. The flour was old, but usable. The yeast had been stored badly. The oven ran hotter on the left side, and one mixing bowl had a crack that widened beneath my thumb. None of that mattered. I worked until the stale smell disappeared beneath butter, onions, roasted beef, and the quiet sweetness of rising dough. Outside the locked door, boots crossed the porch several times. Once, someone tried the handle. Dinner is not improved by supervision, I called. Ben's voice came through the wood. I was only checking if you needed help. Can you peel potatoes without taking photographs? A pause. Yes, ma'am. I opened the door. He kept his phone in his pocket. Ben moved quickly once he understood I was not going to explain myself. He peeled, washed, carried, and watched me with the curiosity of someone who had seen a story online and had not decided whether I matched it. What did the post say? I asked. The peeler stopped. I didn't say there was a post. You didn't have to. He set the potato down. It said you stole recipes from your family's restaurant, that you took money too. The knife in my hand remained over the cutting board. Did it say how much? No. Did it include proof? Ben's ears reddened. There was a picture. There is always a picture. He waited, perhaps expecting a defense. I gave him a bowl of onions. Slice those thin. That was the habit Olivia had counted on. Let someone repeat the lie. Refuse to perform innocence. Leave before they could decide. The refusal meant guilt. My mother used to call it dignity. After she died, I began to suspect it was fear wearing one of her good coats. By late afternoon, men came in from the pastures with dust dried into their faces. They slowed near the dining hall when the smell reached them. No one entered until Daniel did. He stood beside the long table while the men found their places. There were more empty chairs than there should have been. One near the head had been left untouched, its back polished smooth, while the seat carried dust. Daniel noticed me noticing it. Don't serve that place, he said. I removed the plate without asking. The meal began with caution. A ranch hand with a gray beard tore open a piece of bread. Steam touched his face. He took one bite, then reached for the butter before he had finished chewing. Ben grinned into his cup. Plates moved. Bowls crossed the table. Conversation came in pieces, then gathered enough weight to stay. Caleb Ruiz sat on Daniel's right and watched the food disappear, with the alert expression of someone responsible for costs. He was broad-shouldered, sun-darkened, and careful even when he laughed. This beef was meant for tomorrow, he said. It was meant to be eaten. We plan inventory here. Then plan for less waste. Half the vegetables in the cooler were days from being thrown out. Caleb glanced toward Daniel. Daniel cut another piece of meat. She's right. Caleb leaned back. Still seems like a lot of trouble for one dinner. The words were ordinary. My body heard something else. Too much trouble. I had heard that from a landlord who did not want questions about a broken lock. From an employer who paid me less after learning how badly I needed work. From Olivia, when I asked to see the company papers after my mother's funeral. You make everything harder than it has to be, Evelyn. I set down the serving spoon. The old response came with practiced efficiency. Finish the work, pack the bag, leave before morning, make their rejection unnecessary. I crossed to the kitchen and reached for the canvas bag beneath the prep table. Daniel entered before I had closed it. The men want more bread. There isn't any. There are 2 loaves on the cooling rack. They can have them after I leave. His attention dropped to the bag. What happened? Your foreman thinks I'm trouble. My foreman thinks rain is trouble. He still understands we need it. That is not an answer. No, it's context. He moved no closer. He did not block the door. You told me I had one dinner, I said. They ate it. Pay me for the day, and I'll be gone before breakfast. Daniel rested one hand on the table. Caleb's wife left last winter. Soon after, our lender cut the operating line. Since then, he hears every new expense as a threat to 30 paychecks. That does not make me less expensive. It makes his fear older than you. I tightened the strap. Daniel's gaze settled on my hand. You do this often? Cook dinner? Leave before anyone can ask you to stay. The question struck with enough accuracy to feel unfair. A pan snapped as it cooled on the stove. You don't know me. No. But I know what it looks like when someone packs before the conversation is finished. His voice held no accusation. That made it harder to dismiss. From the dining hall came laughter, followed by Ben calling that Cole had taken the last potato and was denying it under oath. Daniel turned toward the sound. For a moment, the strain left his face. Then he noticed the second loaf, wrapped in a clean towel. You made extra. I misjudged the flour. You don't strike me as someone who misjudges flour. I disliked that he had seen the lie. He picked up the brass storage key and placed it beside my bag. The job is yours through the bank review. You decided quickly. The men ate slower. I waited. People eat fast when food is only fuel, he added. Tonight they remembered they were sitting with each other. The empty chair near his place came back to me. So did the painted-over word on the sign. Daniel stepped toward the hall, then stopped. I don't need your history tonight. But whatever Ben saw, it will not stay outside the gate forever. I know. When it comes through, I expect the truth. You expect obedience. No, obedience is easier. He left with the second loaf. I stood beside the packed bag until the laughter rose again. Then I unpacked it. At the bottom lay an envelope Olivia had sent to my last employer. I had never opened it. Her lies rarely changed, only the names of the people receiving them. I carried it to the stove. The corner caught first. Blue flame climbed across Olivia's handwriting and folded the paper inward. For a few seconds, destroying it felt like taking something back. Then I saw Daniel's brass key beside my mother's book and understood what I had done. I had burned the accusation. I had also burned the chance to prove how long she had been following me. The brass key stayed beside my mother's book for more than a month before I stopped thinking of it as borrowed. By then, the kitchen had developed a rhythm that did not depend on panic. Ben arrived before dawn without being asked, and learned that biscuits punished hesitation. Caleb continued to question every purchase, though he stopped doing it while chewing. Cole, the oldest hand on the ranch, began leaving his coffee cup near the stove. I washed it each night and set it in the same place each morning. Daniel came through the dining hall at sunrise, noon, and dusk, with the punctuality of a clock that had forgotten how to rest. He spoke little, but he noticed changes. A loose pantry hinge was repaired before I mentioned it. The cracked mixing bowl returned, mended with a metal brace. A small fan appeared near the oven after he saw me press a cold towel against my neck. He never said the fan was for me. I never thanked him for it. That was how we handled kindness at Cedar Ridge, quietly enough that neither person had to admit it mattered. Near the end of my 5th week, rain turned the yard into dark mud. Half the men returned early from the lower pasture, soaked through and irritated by work they could not finish. I moved lunch forward and made soup from smoked beef, tomatoes, and the last of the corn. Ben stood at the prep table trimming green onions. My mother makes this when somebody's sick, he said. Are you sick? No. Then cut faster. He smiled and bent over the board. The blue recipe book lay open beside me. Moisture had swollen the cloth along the spine, and the back cover no longer closed flat. I pressed it down with my palm. Something crackled inside. Not paper between the pages, something beneath the cloth. A line of old stitching ran along the inside edge of the back cover. The thread was the same faded blue as the fabric, nearly invisible beneath years of flour and grease. Ben leaned closer. Was that always there? I don't know. The answer unsettled me. I knew every stain in that book. I knew which pages carried my grandmother's handwriting and which measurements my mother changed after I complained that her peach filling was too sweet. I had never noticed the stitches. Daniel entered carrying dry towels from the leaking laundry room. He set them near the door, then saw the book in my hands. What happened? Nothing yet. I reached for a paring knife. Daniel offered the small folding knife from his pocket instead. The blade was narrow enough to lift one stitch at a time. You carry a sewing knife? I asked. It's a stockman's knife. It has a delicate opinion of itself. Ben turned a laugh into a cough. Daniel stayed beside the table while I cut the first thread. Neither man reached for the book. That mattered. Olivia had always handled my mother's things as if access created ownership. She opened drawers without asking. After the funeral, she took the office keys from the hook and called it efficiency. Daniel kept both hands on the table. The final stitch loosened. I peeled back the cloth. A narrow envelope had been flattened between the coverboard and the fabric. Age had yellowed the edges, but the seal remained intact. My name was written on the front. Not Evelyn Hart. Evie. Only my mother called me that after I turned 12. The kitchen narrowed to the envelope, and the small curve at the end of her letter Y. Ben put down the green onions. I can finish lunch, he said. He carried the cutting board to the far counter and gave us the closest thing the kitchen allowed to privacy. Daniel did not ask whether I wanted him to leave. He waited for me to decide. I broke the seal. Inside was a folded receipt from the county development office and a strip of paper torn from one of my mother's order pads. The receipt acknowledged a submitted business grant application under the name Hart Family Table. A file reference had been stamped across the top. Beneath the restaurant name, 2 project developers were listed. Margaret Hart, Evelyn Hart. My thumb covered my own name, then moved away, as if the ink might vanish. Does that help? Daniel asked. I don't know. It proved my mother had named me as part of the work before she died. It did not prove every recipe belonged to me. It did not explain the missing money Olivia accused me of taking. It did not erase the employers who had stopped returning my calls. But it existed. That alone hurt. My mother had made a record of me, while I had spent months believing she left none. I opened the smaller note. Evie, the county asked for copies of the new menu drafts, the tasting notes, and the photographs from our winter trial dinners. I sent everything. Keep this number somewhere Olivia cannot organize it out of existence. You know why the last page is blank. Love. Mom. The paper slipped against my fingers. Daniel's jaw tightened at Olivia's name. What does that mean? I don't know. It was true, and it sounded like a lie. My mother and Olivia had argued during the final months of her life. I had heard doors close and watched my mother move papers from the office to our apartment. Whenever I asked, she said grief was making everyone territorial. I accepted that answer because it required no confrontation. That had been my mistake long before the funeral. I chose the explanation that asked the least of me and called it trust. Rain struck the windows harder. Call the county office, Daniel said. Today, before the file learns how to disappear. The warning beneath his dry tone was clear. I folded the note along its old crease. Olivia has people in that county. So do I. That is not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. His phone vibrated against his belt. He checked the screen, and the controlled set of his face shifted. Who is it? The bank. He stepped toward the hall, then stopped. They moved the site review forward. How far? Next month became next week. The loan was the reason Caleb counted onions. It was the reason the patched roof still waited. It was the reason Daniel's shoulders never seemed to lower. They want a public dinner with the county development board, he said. The reporter will be invited. My mother's note remained open between us. A county file. A public dinner. Olivia's name inside a warning. Daniel lifted the receipt by its clean outer edge. We need to know what is in that archive before anyone else knows we are looking. From the far counter, Ben stopped chopping. The exterior door opened. Caleb stood there, rain dripping from his hat, a padded courier envelope beneath one arm. It came by express delivery. He placed it on the table. The return address belonged to Olivia's company. Across the front, in red ink, someone had written, "For Daniel Mercer only." Daniel did not open Olivia's envelope in front of Caleb. He carried it to his office and asked me to come after lunch. The county receipt and my mother's note remained inside the blue book beneath my clean aprons. When I entered, Olivia's envelope lay on the desk between us. The seal was broken. You opened it. It was addressed to me. That does not answer the question I was asking. His hand flattened over the papers. No, it answers the question you wanted to ask. Inside was a formal complaint accusing me of stealing trade secrets, misusing company funds, and approaching vulnerable businesses under false pretenses. Olivia had attached the photograph from the fire and copies of emails with entire paragraphs removed. The final page was addressed to Cedar Ridge's lender. She offered to delay filing a claim against the ranch if Daniel dismissed me and confirmed that I had misrepresented my employment history. She wants your signature, I said. She wants a witness she can quote. She wants you to help write the ending. Daniel folded the demand. She is not getting it. The answer should have comforted me. Instead, I noticed a loan disclosure form beneath his hand. The section for pending legal disputes remained blank. You have to tell the bank. I have to know whether her complaint has legal standing. You know it exists. And if I disclose an unsupported threat before the review, the bank freezes the application. The word freezes carried 30 paychecks, a patched roof, and late supplier accounts. You cannot hide it forever. I am not hiding it forever. Only until the truth becomes convenient? His chair moved back. That is not fair. No, it is efficient. He heard his own language return to him and went still. I should have pushed harder. A secret held for a good reason could still become a weapon in someone else's hand. Instead, I chose the version of the conversation that let me keep the kitchen. Call the county, I said. Find the grant file before the dinner. Daniel nodded. Neither of us mentioned the blank line again. The following week moved with the precision of a storm warning. The county office confirmed that an archived file existed but would not release it without identity verification and a records review. Their clerk promised a call within 10 business days. The bank dinner was 4 days away. Daniel invited the loan officer, 2 county development board members, the local reporter, and several suppliers. Caleb arranged tables. Ben polished water glasses until Cole told him he was removing glass instead of dirt. I planned a meal my mother once called a promise dinner. Food for people who needed to believe the future could still be made from what remained. Daniel found me before sunrise on the morning of the review. He carried 2 coffee cups and set one beside the blue book. You did not sleep. Neither did you. I had work. You walked past the kitchen 3 times. His fingers tightened around the cup. Evelyn, if anything happens tonight, let me handle the bank. Handle the bank or handle me. The loan is complicated. So am I. The oven timer sounded before either of us could make the conversation worse. By evening, the dining hall no longer looked tired. White cloth covered the tables. Lantern light softened the repaired walls. The men wore clean shirts beside suppliers who had spent months waiting for payment. The county reporter photographed the bread before anyone touched it. Daniel stood near the projection screen explaining Cedar Ridge's recovery plan. Caleb described the new grazing schedule. Ben carried platters with the solemn pride of someone trusted with more than dishes. The loan officer ate 2 helpings. A county board member asked who designed the menu. Daniel's attention found me. Evelyn Hart. He said my name without caution. Then the exterior door opened. Olivia entered with a lawyer, a projector remote, and the blue coat she wore to my mother's funeral. Conversation thinned. She approached the loan officer. I apologize for interrupting, but your institution is being asked to finance a material legal risk. Daniel left the screen. This is private property. Then you should have kept private property out of your kitchen. Her lawyer handed the loan officer a copy of the complaint. Daniel's shoulders squared. He wanted to speak, but any defense invited the question he had delayed all week. When did you first learn about this? Olivia understood the trap. She lifted my mother's blue book from the display table. My body moved before thought. 1 step. Then I stopped. The photograph appeared behind her, ash on my face, the book beneath my coat, fear made to resemble guilt. Across it was the word she had chosen for me, predatory. Olivia said I found grieving owners, learned where their businesses were weakest, and made myself indispensable before claiming what belonged to them. The reporter lowered her camera but did not turn it off. Caleb's wife reached for his hand. Cole's mouth became a hard line. Ben stood frozen beside an empty platter. Olivia placed the book in the center of the head table. "Tell them why you disappeared after Margaret died." The answer pressed against my teeth. "Because you changed the locks. Because you registered the recipes 3 days after the funeral. Because I found my mother's office emptied and believed leaving was the only dignity you had not taken." I could say all of it. Then the loan officer would ask Daniel why the complaint had never appeared in the disclosure file. My old instinct offered the familiar exit. Say nothing. Let them decide. Pack before dawn. Daniel rose. For one painful second, his hand touched the back of his chair, as if he might remain behind it. Then he crossed to Olivia, took the book before she could pull it away, and placed it in front of me. He did not open it. He did not speak for me. "She tells it herself," he said. Every face turned toward my chair. His voice lowered. "Start with the blank page." I put both palms on the table and stood. My mother left that page empty because the loan officer closed his folder. "Before you continue, I need to ask Mr. Mercer a question." Daniel faced him. "When did you first receive notice of this dispute?" Daniel could lie and save the evening. He could tell the truth and freeze the loan. Olivia watched him with the satisfaction of someone who had led a careful man to the only square she left open. "Last week," Daniel said. Caleb's chair scraped the floor. The loan officer gathered the complaint and his notes. "This review is suspended effective immediately." A supplier near the door whispered about unpaid invoices. One county official turned her Cedar Ridge name card face down. Caleb stared at Daniel, then at me. "Did you know he was keeping this from the bank?" The question was not cruel. That made it worse. 30 men waited to learn whether I had brought the fire to their table. "Yes," I said. Ben lowered the empty platter. Across from me, Olivia smiled. The meal was still warm. No one reached for another bite. The dining hall emptied in pieces. The banker left first. The county officials followed, without finishing their coffee. Suppliers gathered near the door and spoke loudly enough for Daniel to hear words like exposure, delay, and payment. The ranch hands stayed longer because leaving before Daniel dismissed them would have felt like taking a side. Caleb finally stood. "We'll meet before breakfast," he said. Daniel nodded. Caleb did not look at me again. Ben collected plates. No one had touched after Olivia's accusation. He stacked them too quickly until Cole put a hand over the next one. "Slow down," Cole said. Ben swallowed and carried the stack into the kitchen. Olivia left my mother's book on the table. That bothered me more than if she had taken it. She had arrived certain she could use it, then walked away certain she no longer needed it. I found Ben scraping untouched food into a bin. "Stop. We can't serve it tomorrow. We can feed the night crew." His mouth tightened. "Are they still going to have jobs tomorrow?" I had no answer that belonged in his hands. "Put the food away," I said. After he left, I packed the beef into metal containers and carried them to the walk-in cooler. Cole demanded simple things. Close the lid. Label the shelf. Keep moving. Daniel entered while I was stacking the final tray. His jacket hung over one arm. "You should not be in here without a coat. You should not be in here without a loan." His face absorbed the blow. He placed the jacket over a box. "We need to talk. We needed to talk before tonight." "Yes." The cooler door eased shut behind him. The compressor filled the small space with a steady hum. "I told Caleb the suspension was my decision," he said. "It was. I told him you advised disclosure. I agreed to wait, after I made the choice feel necessary." The cold stiffened my fingers. Daniel noticed and slid his jacket across the box. This time I put it on. The lining still held his warmth. "What did Olivia mean when she said you disappeared?" he asked. I fastened one button because my hands needed work. She changed the locks 3 days after the funeral. I still had keys to the kitchen, so I went in through the delivery entrance and took the book. And the money? There was no money. She included bank records. She included withdrawals my mother authorized for medical bills. My name was on the account because I handled purchasing. Olivia removed the pages showing where the payments went. My voice held until I said medical bills. Then it did not. "My mother was dying while Olivia was building a case against me," I said. I kept telling myself they were arguing because grief makes people ugly. I did not ask what Olivia was filing. I did not copy the contracts. Because you trusted her. Because asking would have required me to admit I already didn't. The admission belonged to me. I made it easy, I said, not for Olivia to steal. That was her choice. I made it easy for her to tell everyone I had no claim because I left every place where she repeated it. I thought refusing to fight made me dignified. What did it make you? Available for erasure. Daniel breathed out slowly. I need to tell you something else. He removed a folded page from his shirt pocket. At the top was the name of a private investigations firm. My name appeared beneath it. You investigated me. I asked for a background check after Ben recognized you. When? The night of your first dinner. The jacket suddenly felt wrong around my shoulders. You offered me the job while someone was searching my life. I had 30 employees and a loan review. You could have asked me. You had refused to answer. So you decided consent was inefficient. His jaw shifted. Yes. He unfolded the page. Former addresses, employers, court filings, and Hart family table reduced my life to searchable risk. The investigator found the complaint but could not access the attachments, he said. I contacted someone in the bank's compliance office and asked whether Olivia had submitted anything involving Cedar Ridge. That person sent you the packet. Yes. You did not accidentally receive a secret. No. You went looking for one. Yes. The compressor stopped. His breathing sounded too near. Why didn't you tell me? I told myself I was waiting until I knew whether the claim was real. That is not the whole answer. His gaze dropped. No. I waited. Part of me wanted a reason not to trust you. Because of the ranch? Because of what was happening to it. He stopped. That is still not the whole answer. Daniel bent one corner of the page beneath his thumb. My wife died after a year of being sick. Every decision in that year was made around what might be taken next. Afterward, I learned to examine anything that mattered before it had the chance to become necessary. I am not a fence line. I know. You treated me like one. Yes. His voice broke, then steadied. And when I realized I was beginning to wait for you to walk into a room, I wanted the report to give me permission to stop. He stepped closer. My hand rose between us. Not tonight. He stopped immediately. I am not leaving because Olivia wants me gone, I said. And I am not staying because you feel guilty. I don't want either. If anything ever happens between us, it cannot begin with you rescuing me, or with me hiding behind your name. Then tell me where to stand, beside the truth. Not in front of me. He nodded. I removed his jacket and set it back on the box. Then I took the brass storage key from my pocket. I will finish breakfast, I said. After that, I am moving into town. Evelyn, I need a place that does not belong to you while I decide whether I can work for you. I placed the key in his palm and closed his fingers around it. He did not argue. When he opened the cooler door, warm kitchen air moved around us. My mother's blue book lay on the prep table beside my phone. A county records message blinked across the screen. The archived grant file was ready for release, but only if I appeared in person with identification, and Olivia had already filed a challenge to block access. I moved out of Cedar Ridge before sunrise. Not because I wanted to disappear. That distinction mattered, even if no one saw it. My canvas bag went into Caleb's truck. The blue recipe book stayed on my lap. Daniel carried the last box from the room beside the kitchen and set it behind me without trying to change my mind. You can use the guest cottage, he said. It belongs to the ranch. It has a separate door. It still belongs to you. His hands remained on the box. Men crossed the yard toward breakfast, speaking more quietly than usual. I found a room in town, I said. Where? Above the laundromat. That building has bad wiring. So does your west barn. I am fixing the barn. I will buy a fire extinguisher. He did not smile. Daniel held out the brass storage key. You need this to work. I took it because refusing the key would have turned a boundary into punishment. Our arrangement changes today, I said. Written hours. Written wages. No private investigation. No decisions about my case without me. Agreed. And I choose what happens with the county file. His answer took longer. Agreed. If the bank asks whether I live here, the answer is no. His attention settled on the doorway behind me. I understand. Caleb drove without conversation until the ranch disappeared behind a rise. My wife says Daniel is losing his judgment, he said. Do you? I think he lost it before you arrived. He just lost it in ways that looked responsible. That is not the same as trusting me. No. The room above the laundromat smelled of detergent and hot metal. It had one narrow bed, a sink with a rust-colored ring, and a window facing the county courthouse. I paid the first week in cash. The amount left in my wallet was small enough to count without touching it. By mid-morning, the practical consequences began arriving. The feed supplier moved Cedar Ridge to payment in advance. A grocery distributor canceled the holiday beef order. The insurer requested Olivia's complaint and warned that any commercial use of disputed recipes could affect coverage. Then the bank sent Daniel a formal notice. The operating line was frozen until the dispute and the incomplete disclosure were reviewed. Payroll was due in 9 days. Daniel read the notice in the kitchen while I made lunch. "We can cover one payroll," he said. "And after that, we sell cattle early or miss payments elsewhere." Caleb stood near the pantry with a ledger. "The drought market is down. Selling now means taking the worst price of the year." Ben stopped washing carrots. Daniel folded the notice. "No one misses a paycheck." Caleb's expression hardened. "You cannot promise that yet." I dried my hands. "What does the insurer mean by commercial use?" Daniel slid the second letter toward me. Their language covered any dish substantially based on material claimed by Hart family table. Every meal I had prepared carried some piece of my mother. A seasoning method, a dough ratio, the order in which onions met heat. Olivia had found a way to make memory look like inventory. Caleb read over my shoulder. "We cannot risk the policy. You want me out of the kitchen. I want the ranch insured." Ben turned off the faucet. "I can cook," he said. "Not like Miss Hart, but enough to keep people fed." "It may have to be," I said. I opened the blue book to my mother's soup recipe. Her handwriting filled the page. My notes ran along the margin. "Use less salt if the beef has been smoked. Add the tomatoes after the onions soften." I closed it. "What are you making?" Ben asked. "Something that is not in there." I emptied the prepared pot and began again. No inherited spice blend, no written proportions, nothing Olivia could point to and call hers. The first batch was flat. The second had too much vinegar. I threw neither away. Waste had become another word for wages. By lunch I had a stew that belonged to that morning. Smoked beef, roasted peppers, bitter greens, and corn crushed against the side of the pot. Cole tasted it before the bell. "This from the book?" "No." He took another spoonful. "Put it in." The words caught beneath my ribs. I did not. Not yet. After lunch, a woman arrived in a silver car and parked beside Daniel's office. She wore a linen blouse despite the dust and carried grief with the posture of someone who had been carrying it longer than anyone mentioned. Daniel met her on the porch. Nora Mercer was his late wife's sister. Their argument traveled through the open kitchen window. "You concealed a legal threat from the bank. I made the wrong decision. For a woman you have known barely 6 weeks. For 30 employees. Do not use them to make this noble." A chair shifted against the porch boards. "Rachel spent her life building this ranch," Nora said. "You do not get to gamble it because someone made the dining hall feel warm again." The knife in my hand stopped. Daniel answered evenly. "Evelyn is not replacing Rachel. I did not say she was. You came here to—" I set the knife down and walked outside. Nora turned toward me. Her face changed when she realized how much I had heard, but she did not apologize. "I moved out this morning," I said. "I have hired my own attorney. I am not asking Daniel to fund my case, house me, or speak for me. That does not return the bank's confidence. No. It keeps my life from becoming another ranch asset he thinks he has to manage." Daniel absorbed the sentence without defending himself. Nora studied us. "Then why are you still here?" "Because leaving every time someone tells the wrong story about me is how I help the story survive." I turned to Daniel. "Thomas Reed agreed to represent me. I am filing a response to Olivia's records challenge this afternoon. I'll come with you." "No." His shoulders tightened. "I can provide the bank correspondence. Send it to Thomas." "Evelyn, this is the boundary. I will not build my defense inside your protection," I said. "And you will not repair what happened between us by spending money or standing closer." Daniel's voice dropped. "What am I allowed to do?" "Tell the truth when it costs you." A truck entered through the gate. The driver handed Caleb a certified envelope from the county development office. Olivia had requested an emergency hearing to prevent release of the grant archive. Until then, the file would remain sealed. At the bottom of the notice was another name, Mia Foster. My mother's former kitchen manager had submitted a sworn statement supporting Olivia's claim. Mia had watched me create half the recipes Olivia said I stole. She had also been the last person who promised my mother she would tell the truth. The video reached Cedar Ridge before breakfast. Ben found it first. He entered the kitchen holding his phone in both hands, his face pale above the screen. "You need to see this." I was cutting peppers for the morning eggs. I finished the one beneath my knife before I took the phone. The image showed the delivery corridor behind Hart family table on the day Olivia changed the locks. Smoke damage blackened the ceiling. I stood beside the rear door with my mother's blue book against my chest. Olivia appeared from the office and grabbed the cover. The clip showed me wrenching it away. It did not show her striking my wrist first. It did not show the company lawyer blocking the exit. It ended with me shouting that the book belonged to me, then cut to a photograph of the restaurant's empty safe. A caption beneath the video said I had taken recipes and money before fleeing town. By the time I handed the phone back, Caleb was in the doorway. "How many people have seen it?" Ben swallowed. "More every minute." Caleb rubbed one hand over his jaw. "The feed supplier sent it to me. He wants cash before the next delivery." Daniel entered behind him. A folded document sat in his hand. "The bank has converted the suspension into a formal hold," he said. "No withdrawals from the operating line. No exceptions." Caleb laughed once without humor. "That leaves us 6 days. 5, Daniel said. "The insurance premium clears tomorrow." No one spoke. The peppers waited beneath my knife. "What is the paper?" I asked. Daniel folded it smaller. Nothing decided. Caleb turned toward him. "It is the deed for Rachel's south pasture." The name changed the air. Rachel had inherited that land from her father. Daniel's wife had refused every offer to sell it during the drought that nearly ended the ranch. "You are mortgaging it," I said. "I am considering temporary collateral. That is what mortgaging means when you are trying to forgive yourself." Daniel's expression tightened. "It covers payroll and feed until the bank review is resolved." "And if it is not resolved?" He gave no answer. Nora's warning returned to me. "You do not get to gamble what Rachel built because someone made the dining hall feel warm again." I set down the knife. "Do not use her land to protect me. This is not about protecting you." Caleb shifted his weight. "It became about all of us the night the bank walked out." Daniel faced him. "Then help me keep all of you paid. I am trying to keep you from making another decision alone." That was new. Caleb had defended Daniel's authority while questioning his judgment. Now the foreman stood between Daniel and the choice Daniel believed only he was entitled to make. A truck horn sounded near the gate. Thomas Reed arrived with Mia Foster in the passenger seat. Mia looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair, once pinned perfectly for service, had been cut unevenly near her jaw. She carried a canvas purse and kept both hands around it when Thomas brought her into the kitchen. Daniel moved toward the office. I stopped him. "She came to speak to me." Mia's eyes filled. "I am sorry." I had imagined hearing those words many times. In every version, they repaired something. In the real kitchen, they only made me tired. Thomas placed a copy of Mia's sworn statement on the table. "She contacted me last night," he said. "She wants to withdraw it." Caleb breathed out. Mia shook her head. "I wanted to. I cannot." Thomas closed his eyes briefly. Olivia had paid the deposit for an experimental treatment for Mia's father. The next payment was due soon. If Mia recanted, Olivia's company would stop covering the bills. "I told myself the statement was narrow," Mia said. "That I only confirmed you removed the book and had access to the accounts. Both are true. You also said my mother never named me as a developer." Mia gripped the purse harder. "Olivia wrote that section. And you signed it." "Yes." "Did my mother name me?" Mia's mouth trembled. "Every day." The answer struck more sharply than the lie. She had watched my mother hand me menus to revise. She had watched customers taste dishes I built. She had heard my mother introduce me to suppliers as the future of the restaurant. Mia knew. She chose the version that paid for more hope. I understood the calculation. Understanding did not make it less of a betrayal. "Will you tell the hearing officer?" I asked. She pressed her lips together. "I cannot lose the treatment." Thomas spoke quietly. Without Mia's testimony, the archive challenge could remain sealed for months. Mia opened her purse and removed a folded card. "Olivia sent this for you." The card contained a settlement offer. Olivia would withdraw the theft claim, release Cedar Ridge from any recipe dispute, and pay enough money to cover the ranch's immediate shortfall. In return, I would sign a statement saying the recipes belonged exclusively to Hart family table, promise never to discuss their development, and acknowledge that grief had affected my memory after my mother's death. At the bottom, Olivia had left a blank line for my signature. Daniel reached for the card. I pulled it back. "This is mine." His hand stopped. Thomas read the amount and swore beneath his breath. Caleb stared at the payroll ledger. The offer was large enough to save the ranch. It was also written so that everyone could tell themselves I had chosen peace rather than surrender. My phone vibrated. Messages filled the screen. Former employers. Unknown numbers. A reporter asking whether I targeted grieving men. A stranger telling me Daniel's wife deserved better. Then an email from Olivia appeared. The subject line contained one word. Enough. I opened a reply. "I am sorry for the pain and confusion surrounding my departure from Hart family table." The sentence arrived easily. It was the language I had used all my life when someone else injured me and wanted relief from witnessing the wound. I typed another line. I never intended to claim work that was not mine. The lie looked polite on the screen. My thumb hovered above send. Daniel stood across the table, but he did not take the phone. Ben turned away to give me privacy. Caleb watched the payroll ledger. Mia cried without sound. No one could make the choice clean. I deleted the first line. Then the second. I placed the phone face down. "I will not sign this." Caleb's shoulders dropped. Daniel did not move. "You understand what that means?" Caleb asked. "Yes. Some men may not be here next month." "I know." His voice roughened. "Then give me a reason I can take to them." I put Olivia's settlement beside my mother's book. Because if she can buy my agreement that memory belongs to whoever has more money, she can do it to any one of us. Mia flinched. I continued. "I will not ask this ranch to fund my defense. I will not ask Daniel to mortgage Rachel's land, reduce my wages, end my contract if you must. But do not call surrender payroll." Daniel tore the mortgage application in half. Caleb stared at the pieces. "That does not create money." "No," Daniel said. "It creates a line I should have drawn before Evelyn had to." A county vehicle stopped outside. A clerk stepped onto the porch carrying a sealed notice. Olivia had requested that the emergency hearing be moved forward. It would begin the following morning. And she had added Cedar Ridge Ranch as a co-defendant. The county hearing was held in a room designed to make every human problem look administrative. Gray walls, metal chairs. A clock loud enough to measure hesitation. Thomas arranged our documents at the left table. My mother's blue book rested beside the county receipt, Olivia's settlement offer, and the complaint Daniel had obtained through the bank. Daniel sat in the row behind me. Not beside Thomas, not at my shoulder, behind me, where he could witness without becoming my answer. Caleb held the Cedar Ridge payroll ledger across his knees. Nora sat beside Daniel. Ben and Cole stood near the back among ranch workers, reporters, and former restaurant employees. Mia did not enter. I had seen her in the hallway, her father's treatment schedule folded inside her purse. "I cannot testify today," she said. "I know. Your mother made a recording for the grant application. Did Olivia hear it?" Mia lowered her eyes. Before I could ask more, Olivia's lawyer approached. Mia walked away. Now Olivia sat across the aisle in a cream suit, composed enough to suggest she had slept. The hearing officer entered. "This proceeding concerns access to a disputed county archive and the request to restrain Evelyn Hart and Cedar Ridge Ranch from using claimed proprietary material." Olivia's attorney stood first. He described Hart Family Table as a business Olivia preserved after Margaret Hart's death. He said I had access to purchasing accounts, confidential recipes, menu drafts, and the restaurant after my authority was revoked. All true. He said I used the rear entrance and removed the blue book against Olivia's objection. Also true. The lie did not begin where the facts ended. It began where Olivia decided what they meant. Her attorney played the edited video. My voice filled the hearing room. "This belongs to me." The clip stopped before the rest. "Because my mother gave it to me before she died." The hearing officer turned toward Thomas. "Does your client dispute removing the book?" "No," I said. Thomas's hand paused over his notes. The officer studied me. "You will have an opportunity to testify." "I am testifying now." Reporters raised their pens. Thomas leaned closer. "You do not have to answer outside the sequence." The old relief appeared. "Let the lawyer carry it. Let procedure become another place to hide." I closed the book. I took it. I used the rear entrance. I had access to the purchasing account. I left town without filing a claim. Those facts belong to Olivia because I gave them to her every time I refused to explain them. Olivia's expression remained smooth. Her attorney asked whether grief had affected my judgment. Yes. Did you accuse Miss Hart of theft before removing the book? No. Did you report missing records? No. Did you notify investors that you claimed ownership? No. Each answer sounded like another lock turning. Her attorney faced the officer. Miss Hart did not assert ownership until she attached herself to a ranch seeking public support. This claim is leverage, not memory. Daniel shifted behind me. He did not stand. The hearing officer opened Olivia's declaration. It said, "My mother created every protected recipe before I joined the company." It said Olivia had never seen a county filing naming me as a developer. It suggested the receipt found inside the book could have been planted later. Thomas rose. The archive can settle that. That archive contains protected business material, Olivia's attorney said. We requested private review, not public release. The officer nodded to the clerk. A records custodian entered carrying a sealed cardboard box tied with white cotton tape. The date stamp matched the receipt hidden inside the book. The custodian placed it before the officer. I retrieved this from restricted storage. The seal is original. Olivia reached for her water. The officer examined the label. Before I open this, does either party claim knowledge of the specific contents? Thomas shook his head. Olivia's lawyer said, "My client knows only that an application may have existed." The officer touched the knot. Olivia's glass struck the table. Water spread across her declaration. Who gave you the original grant file? No one had called it original. No one had said what the box contained. Olivia's lawyer turned toward her. The officer stopped. You stated you had no knowledge of the archive's contents. I assumed. You identified it as the original file. I meant the original application. That distinction was not available from anything said here. Olivia pressed a napkin against the water. Her composure did not disappear. It fractured once. It was enough. Thomas requested that her declaration be treated as potentially misleading and that the archive receive a protected evidentiary review. The officer removed the tape. Inside were menu drafts in my handwriting, photographs of my mother and me serving winter trial dinners, ingredient invoices signed by both of us, and tasting sheets where my mother had crossed out her measurements and written Evelyn's version beneath them. After examining the first documents, the officer admitted the non-confidential portions into the record. A small recorder rested inside an evidence sleeve. The clerk played the file. My mother's voice came through the speaker, thinner than I remembered, but unmistakable. She identified the grant project and described Hart Family Table as the business she and I were rebuilding together. Olivia would manage operations. I would develop the menu and future brand. Then my mother said the blue book held family history, not corporate ownership. She said the final page was blank for the name I would choose when I was ready to build something without asking permission. The recording ended. My hand settled over the blank page. Olivia found her voice. Margaret was medicated. Evelyn pressured her while she was dying. The cruelty came too quickly to be invented that morning. I stood. You registered the recipes 3 days after her funeral. I protected the company. You changed the locks. You were unstable. You paid Mia's father's medical deposit before asking for her statement. Olivia's lawyer rose. That is unsupported. I placed the settlement offer beside the open archive. She offered to save Cedar Ridge if I signed away my memory. The officer read the first page. Olivia turned toward the reporters. She performs grief because it is the only thing she has ever done better than work. My fingers tightened against the blank paper, then loosened. You did not steal my recipes first, I said. You stole the silence you knew I would give you. Olivia's face changed. I'm taking that back. I did not ask for Hart Family Table. I asked for access to the archive, suspension of Olivia's exclusive claim, review of the theft accusation, and my mother's name on every disputed recipe until ownership was resolved. Not revenge. A record. The hearing officer granted temporary archive access and suspended the request preventing Cedar Ridge from serving food I created independently. The larger ownership dispute would continue. So would the bank investigation. Mia still had not testified. Outside, cameras waited on the courthouse steps. Daniel remained behind me until I reached the door. Then he stopped. He did not touch my back or tell me what to say. Where do you want me? He asked. I opened the book to its final page, close enough to hear me. We stepped outside together. Across the street, Olivia's lawyer was already speaking into a phone. Olivia watched me. Her story had cracked. It had not fallen. 3 months after the hearing, Hart family tables still belonged to Olivia on paper. The county archive had forced a review of her exclusive claim. But review was not restoration. Lawyers used words like provisional, disputed, and pending, while invoices arrived with deadlines that were not provisional at all. The county newspaper printed a correction on an inside page. Olivia's accusation had filled the front page. The correction occupied less space than an advertisement for livestock fencing. Some people who had called me a thief never saw it. Others saw it and decided the truth was merely another version. I stopped asking whether everyone believed me. That question had kept Olivia in charge long after I left her restaurant. Mia had not testified. Her father completed one treatment cycle, then developed complications. Olivia continued paying. Mia sent me one letter every week and signed none of them. I kept every envelope unopened in a flour tin above my rented sink. Cedar Ridge received a smaller loan under stricter terms. Daniel had to accept an outside financial monitor, sell part of the spring cattle early, and submit every major expense for approval. 4 ranch hands left before the credit line reopened. Cole retired sooner than planned. Another man took work with a drilling crew. Ben stayed, though he began taking evening classes at the community college, and no longer apologized when he left the kitchen before every dish was finished. "You are supposed to learn enough to leave me," I told him. "I thought I was learning enough to replace you. That is how bad kitchens are inherited." He laughed and returned to his bread. The dining hall opened to the public every Thursday night. We called it the Blank Page Supper. The name belonged to me. So did the menu. I built each dish away from my mother's written recipes, though pieces of her appeared anyway. The way I browned onions, the patience I gave dough, the habit of feeding the person nearest the stove before serving myself. Olivia's attorney sent a letter claiming even those methods belonged to Hart family table. Thomas framed the first page and hung it above his office coffee machine. Daniel wanted to pay the legal fees. I refused. He asked once, accepted the answer, and never asked again. Instead, Cedar Ridge rented me the dining hall and kitchen under an agreement Thomas reviewed. The rent was low, but real. I paid it every month. Daniel and I learned each other through smaller decisions. He stopped entering the kitchen without knocking. I stopped packing my bag whenever his voice became too careful. When he wanted to help, he asked what the help was for. When I wanted to leave, I said where I was going. It was not forgiveness. It was practice. Nora came to the supper twice before she spoke to me beyond ordering food. On her third visit, she brought Rachel's old table linens. "I thought they should be used," she said. I unfolded one. Tiny yellow flowers had been stitched along the edge. "Are you sure?" "No," Nora answered. "But certainty has done enough damage around here." We covered the long table with them. The empty chair near Daniel's place remained empty. No one discussed it. Some grief deserves a seat without being asked to explain why it is still there. The first cold Thursday of the season brought more people than we could fit inside. Ranch families ate beside county clerks, suppliers, school teachers, and strangers who had followed the hearing in the newspaper. A woman asked whether the pot roast was one of my family recipes. My hand tightened around the serving spoon. The reaction was smaller than before. It still came. "No," I said. "It is mine." The woman smiled. "It tastes like someone taught you well." My throat closed. My mother did. Both answers were true. After the final guests left, Ben stacked chairs while Caleb counted the evening receipts. Daniel carried coffee to the table where my blue book waited. The cover had been repaired, but the seam where the hidden envelope had rested remained visible. Daniel set one cup beside it. "Is this seat taken?" "Not tonight." He nodded and began to step back. "I meant it isn't taken." He stopped. I pulled out the chair. Daniel sat without moving it closer. For a while, we listened to Ben argue with Caleb about whether 4 broken plates counted as a successful evening. Then Daniel placed a folded letter beside my cup. The bank had approved the next stage of Cedar Ridge's recovery plan. Not enough to restore everything. Enough to keep going. "You knew before dinner," I said. "Yes. You waited to tell me. I was told good news should not interrupt bread." "That sounds like something I said." I wrote it down. He tapped his shirt pocket. I opened the book to the final page. It was no longer perfectly blank. A faint crease crossed the paper where my hand had pressed against it during the hearing. My mother had left it for the name I would choose when I stopped asking permission. I uncapped my pen. My fingers shook. Daniel saw. He did not cover my hand or tell me I was safe. He turned his coffee cup slowly between his palms and stayed where I had asked him to sit. At the top of the page I wrote, "The blank page supper." Beneath it, I added the date in words and the names of everyone who had worked that night. Ben, Caleb, Cole, though he had only come to complain about the coffee. Nora, Daniel. I left space beneath his name. For what? He asked. Nothing promised. His eyes met mine. Something possible? I considered the question. Outside, wind moved across the repaired roof. The building creaked, held, and settled. Something honest, I said. He smiled, but he did not reach for the pen. The legal case was not over. Olivia had not apologized. Mia had not returned. Cedar Ridge was still one bad season from fear. And I still kept my canvas bag beneath the bed in town. But it was empty now. The blue book remained open between us, not evidence, not stolen property, not a grave. A beginning I had written in my own hand,